Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the show that's all about the fact that you've got nowhere to hide, nowhere to run. We're all slaves, and we live in a slave, serf, scumbag-controlled planet. And if we don't expose those who are really behind the scenes in control, we're going to be screwed a hell of a lot worse than we are already. My very special guest, coming at us all the way from the Uber Kingdom, named after the Saxe-Coburg Gotha Regiment, is Chris Spivey. Welcome back.
Thank you, Vinny. All right. Vinny, over here, just before Christmas, I was contacted by a social worker who used to work for the NSPCC, which, if you don't know, the NSPCC is the National Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children. It is a massive charity, government-funded charity at that. Now, the reason for the contact was because this social worker, Sue, her name is, her and two of her colleagues had been hounded out of this organisation simply for exposing an MK or ANC terrorist called Hein Grosskopf. Now, in 1986, Grosskopf, South African, he saw a very well-to-do white family. His dad was the editor of Beeld, the Beeld newspaper, which is, I think, the biggest one in South Africa. Very, very prominent professor, very upper-middle-class family. He buggered off to join the ANC in 1986, leaving a wife behind. And within 3 months, he was in MK. Now, for anybody who doesn't know, MK is the terrorist wing, the paramilitary wing of the ANC, the ones who set the bombs off and whatnot. To cut a long story short, he fled to England in 1991. Now, at that time, England, Ken Baker was the Home Secretary. He was looking to kick all the ANC MK terrorists out of England. This Grosskopf, he entered the country on a false passport under the name of Evans, and he stayed. But not only did he stay and get leave to stay indefinitely, he miraculously became a qualified social worker, registered with the General and Social Care Council. Now, he had to be fraudulently registered. I broke the story. A lot of people contacted the NSPCC, who refused to answer to start. I had a bit of a spat with an MP who supposedly brought all these pedophiles in British politics to the forefront. But that's a different story. But there's a load of old bollocks anyway. But I had a spat with him on Twitter over it. He said he'd sort of read my article and get back to me, which he never did. A lot of people contacted their politicians about this, mass murderer, basically. Although he received amnesty at the Truth and Reconciliation Committee for one bomb on the Witwatersrand military complex, which killed one person and injured about 70 others. Although at the TRC, the Truth and Reconciliation Committee, they refused to say that. They just said that 30 people was injured. They didn't admit to any deaths, although that's not true. But he was the most wanted man in South Africa with a 50 rand price on his head when he entered the country. So, and we have an extradition treaty with South Africa. We did at the time as well. Yet they let him stay, become a social worker. Well, to have in charge of grief counsellors, incidentally, children's grief counsellors. So, you have a mass murderer in charge of grief. That's like putting a paedophile in charge of a children's swimming class. A lot of people contacted their MPs, got nowhere. finally, the NSPCC bowed to public pressure and issued a statement saying that he wasn't wanted by any government. The TRC said that he didn't commit a crime, which is once again bollocks. When is a crime not a crime? Bearing in mind that South Africa now has an ANC government, so these people were sort of blowing other people up in their name, So they was always going to get it. But just because you give an amnesty doesn't mean you didn't commit a crime. But the major factor here, I say, the NSPCC released this statement saying that Grosskopf, received amnesty, but he hadn't received amnesty when they took him on. Now, he was suspended when he asked for time off to go to the TRC. Incidentally, he still can't return to South Africa today. It's still too dangerous for him to return to South Africa to this very day, which really, when you think about Zuma, the African president, he was same in the ANC. Mandela, he was in the ANC, the terrorists, they're treated like heroes. So he should have been treated like a hero, but he wasn't. You got to ask yourself why. He still can't return to South Africa. He hadn't received amnesty when he was employed as a grief counsellor by the NSPCC. Finally, to cut a long story short, the General and Social Care Council were going to forward the complaint. Panorama, a BBC TV programme, investigative programme, were going to do the story. The Daily Mirror, national newspaper, and I think it was the Telegraph, if I remember, or it might have been the Express. Another newspaper anyway, they was going to run the story. All three got warned off. Now, the Queen is the patron of this charity. Prince Andrew is as you know, Prince Andrew, he was with the paedophile. He lost his job as our roving ambassador for his friendship with this paedophile. Peter Mandelson, who they call the Prince of Darkness, twice drummed out of British politics for wrongdoing, fast-tracking passports for his boyfriend, his Brazilian boyfriend and whatever. A known paedophile as the sort of face of the NSPCC. And we cannot get any answers. I say, the NSPCC statement that they released was total bollocks. I proved it was total bollocks. My own MP, will not even answer me, will not even acknowledge that he got my emails. The list is long. We have Tom Watson, Eric Pickles, 10, 15 MPs, all refusing to acknowledge people. John?
You're aware of Pie and Mash films, right?
I am, yeah, Bill Mahoney, yeah.
Yeah. Well, didn't Bill interview some dude who said that he's got a list of known paedophiles in the UK, and about 300 of them out of the 600 sitting MPs are still there, and they're known paedophiles?
There was when we had the Blair government in. He brought in a D notice because of Dunblane. Do you know the Dunblane massacre, where it was a fellow called Thomas Hamilton walked into a children's primary school and shot dead. I think it was 18. I haven't got my notes in front of me, but I think it was 18 children aged between 5 and 6, and the teacher. Now, he was a Freemason, and he'd been turned down for. He was a known paedophile. He'd been turned down for a gun license, but Lord Robertson overruled the decision, if you like, and he gave him the shotgun license, which he used to kill. They brought a D notice in. They're all connected to a very high children's paedophile ring, a Scottish paedophile ring, and the evidence is protected under the 100-year rule. Like normally you get 30-year disclosure rule, but it's locked away for 100 years. But Tony Blair brought this D notice in. under the guise of national security for the first Iraq War, which, but it wasn't. On top of that, he'd been caught flashing, if you like, in men's toilets. Which seems a popular pastime for British prime ministers. I don't know how Margaret Thatcher got on with it, but Edward Heath was known for it, which he was blackmailed into taking us into the EU, or Common Market as it was then, for the same thing, and for taking boys from the Hortgau in Jersey, boys' home, out of these boats, for ice and whatnot. But so Tony Blair protected all, because a lot of them were caught up within Operation Ore, where they caught all the internet pedophiles, buying porn and whatnot. And I think that's the list you're talking about. They're still in politics. I mean, we've got the case where Ken Sue Clark, I call him, a heavyweight politician from the Thatcher era who's still in the Cameron government today. Ben Fellows, a former child actor, publicly accused him, and I believe has even made a police statement now, which was at the end of November, according to the TAP blog. Ben Fellows made, I say, and what the claim is, although he was 18 at the time, Ken Clark believed that he was 15 and touched his penis in the House of Commons through his trousers in a fellow called Ian Greer's office, who is a lobbyist. And I say Ken Clark says he's through, but he hasn't.
We'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen, after the break with a little bit more from Chris Spivey.
Let's see.
Slave, surf, scumbag controlled planet. And if we don't expose those who are really behind the scenes in control, we're going to be screwed a hell of a lot worse than we are already. My very special guest coming. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the show that's all about the fact that you've got nowhere to hide, nowhere to run. We're all slaves, and we live in a...
to work for the NSPCC, which, if you don't know, the NSPCC is the National Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children. It is a massive, massive charity, government-funded charity at that. Now,
at us all the way from the Uber Kingdom, named after the Saxe-Coburg Gotha Regiment, is Chris Spivey. Welcome back.
Thank you, Vinny. All right. Vinny, over here, just before Christmas, I was contacted by a social worker who used... The reason for the contact was because this social worker, Sue, her name is, her and two of her colleagues had been hounded out of this organisation